Right guys, Kim Jong-Sturgeon is back, thinking she runs an independent tin pot nation like North Korea, or at least her and the SNP do, because they've now decided to moan about Boris Johnson's coming trip to Scotland, and how it's not in the spirit of lockdown or some nonsense like this, when we all know it's the Scotsnap Prat's latest attempt at testing the limited powers Boris Johnson has given them. Of course they have no actual power to stop him doing anything, since he is the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, which includes Scotland, regardless of how much its puppet First Minister doesn't like that fact. We also have the small point that travel is fine if you have a reason to do it, and since Boris Johnson actually makes the laws by decrees these days, he can make anything legal or illegal, as we have seen. If he can make it illegal for you to see your family, then he can make it legal for him to go up to Scotland and salt mine wee Jimmy Cranky. This is just a bit of showmanship for the SNP supporters who will be screaming about how they banned Boris from Scotland. Which obviously means after this, Boris Johnson has to go up there just to rub it in their faces. If he backs out now, then he's even more of a jellyfish than I thought he was, and that is no easy feat, let me tell you. But the Daily Mail have picked up on this and a good amount of salt from the SNP, so let's check that out. But first, remember to follow me on my other social media channels linked down below, like BitChute and Gab. The article itself headlines though, could Nicola Sturgeon try to ban Boris Johnson from going to Scotland? No, she can't. SNP questions whether PM's trip north of the border is essential. Well, considering he's the Prime Minister, it can be essential if he decides that it is. It says the SNP have accused Boris Johnson of showing total disrespect and disregard to coronavirus travel restrictions ahead of the Prime Minister's expected trip to Scotland this week. Well, I would say you give total disrespect and disregard to the people of the UK who pay your fucking wages, the SNP. At the end of the day, you're always begging for money from the rest of the UK, so you should maybe shut your mouth. Boris Johnson, or anyone else for that matter, has the right to go to Scotland if they choose to because we help fund it. And obviously, it's part of the United Kingdom where we can go wherever we please, or at least we should be able to. As it stands though, Boris Johnson has given wee Jimmy Cranky a few more powers to keep her happy while all this shit's going on. That is literally the only reason why devolved administrations have actually got any powers during this shit show. Boris Johnson knows if he had all the power on him, then he wouldn't be able to keep the nations in line. Everything would be on his head and people would be blaming him for absolutely everything. He has delegated out responsibility to multiple people, so it takes some of the heat off him, and obviously Saints, some of the fake nationalists in the SNP, Plaid Cymru and the rest of them like that. If all this was being dictated from Westminster, then this shit show would have ended long ago because people would have just said no in places like Scotland and Wales. Boris Johnson and his team knew that from day dot, and that's why they devolved a lot of shit that they shouldn't really have done to these puppet administrations. It says the Prime Minister will reportedly head north of the border in the coming days to stress the benefits of the Union and to urge Scots to reject separatism. But Mr Johnson's political opponents, including the SNP Minister for Equalities in Holyrood, Christina McLeave, and SNP MP Neil Gray, have both questioned whether the PM's trip is within the spirit of lockdown rules. Well, considering VIPs have special exemptions where they can do what they want, because remember, it's rules for thee but not for me, I would suggest he can do whatever he wants, as I've said. And obviously, being the Prime Minister means he could have to go to any part of this country at any point. So realistically, like I said, this is just showing themselves up to their supporters in the hope of getting a few extra clicks on Twitter and shit like that. They obviously know they cannot block him in any sense of the word from going up there. He could literally just tell them to go and fuck themselves. As a matter of fact, I hope they try it, and I really hope he tells them to go and fuck themselves. Can't see it happening, he's become a bit of a cuck recently, but we can always hope, of course. And the salt that would flow if he did would be fucking biblical, I'm sure you would all agree. It says current curbs in Scotland dictate that people should not cross the border unless it's an essential journey. Travel for work is allowed, but only where that cannot be done from your home, which obviously gives Boris Johnson the right to go up there if he wants. Since he is the Prime Minister and going up there in relation to the Union, it is for work, and obviously within the spirit of the bullshit lockdown rules. But as I've already said, Boris Johnson is the Prime Minister. He can essentially do what he wants and tell them all to shut their fucking mouths. He has an 80-seat majority and is in charge of the country essentially by decree at this point. The situation, it says, is likely to prompt comparisons with last December when Miss Sturgeon appeared to take a swipe at Prince William and Kate Middleton over their whistle-stop tour to Scotland. Well, once again, I'm sure being members of the royal family allows them to do pretty much what the fuck they want. Queenie could come down there and bitch slap old Sturgeon straight in the mouth if she had a problem with it. Of course she wouldn't, but theoretically she could come and do it. Shit, Queenie could walk down the street and essentially wipe out anyone she bloody felt like. And since I expect Prince William will one day be king, maybe old Sturgeon needs to wind their fucking neck in. It says the PM's trip to Scotland comes after the SNP on Saturday released an 11-point roadmap to holding an independence referendum. Yeah, you can have one in about 25 or 30 years. Once in a generation, you was told and accepted. The party has made clear a ballot could take place if May's Holyrood elections result in a pro-independence majority, even if Westminster refuses to grant permission for a rerun of the 2014 referendum. There have now been 20 consecutive polls suggesting a majority of Scots could vote in favour of independence. Yeah, but there have been 20 consecutive polls that said Brexit wasn't going to happen because people would vote to remain. Look what happened there. As we know, in this day and age, polls are about as reliable as the BBC at this point. Take YouGov's polls suggesting 70 or 80% support these lockdown measures, which I'm sorry to say is complete bollocks just from the amount of people I have spoke to, not only on YouTube or the internet, but also in my personal life. 80% support for the lockdowns might have been true last March and April, but it's certainly not true now. Even the people who supported it back then are getting kinda sick of the bullshit. It says Mr Johnson yesterday refused to say if he would mount a legal challenge to a second Scottish independence referendum if Miss Sturgeon does press ahead with another ballot without the agreement of UK ministers. Citing the response to the coronavirus crisis, the PM said he believed that the people can see everywhere in the UK the visible benefits of our wonderful union. Yeah, well, the SNP don't care about that. They just want their independence to go and join Brussels as its vassal state. So, not really independence, let's be honest here. But Johnson should have really come out and said, yes, we will take a legal challenge and stop these fucking idiots from destroying Scotland. Because that is obviously what Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP will do. We have to remember that the EU won't take Scotland in because they've got too much of a deficit, no currency, and it's a complete shit show under fish-lipped Sturgeon. Many European experts have pointed this out various times before, and I've covered it multiple times at this point. So to be honest, her getting an independence referendum is just a pipe dream at this point. Boris Johnson could mount a legal challenge and it would be easily won. The SNP have no power here. Like I've said, puppet government. The same obviously applies to all devolved administrations. You might not like it, but sorry, that's just the way it is. Suck it up, sweetheart. It says the prospect of Mr Johnson going to Scotland this week has prompted SNP fury. Of course it has. Christina McLeave, Minister for Older People and Equalities in the Scottish Government, tweeted, is he campaigning during the pandemic? Should he be travelling? Is this essential work? Well, we've already covered that. He's the Prime Minister. Everything he does is supposed to be essential. Even if that means completely fucking the country, which is obviously what he has done over the past year. SNP MP Neil Gray echoed a similar sentiment as he said, campaigning on the Constitution during a pandemic, you say, total disrespect and disregard for do not travel unless absolutely necessary. Well, I'm sure most would agree going up to Scotland and shitting all over the SNP is an essential piece of work and absolutely necessary. In fact, it's considered a public service at this point. I can fully get behind Boris going up there and shitting on the SNP's party all day long, even if he has pissed me off royally over the past year. John Johnson, another SNP shitweasel, said, I thought only essential travel is allowed under the current lockdown. How does this visit, welcome as the vastly unpopular trips always are, meet the current COVID-19 criteria, or don't the rules apply to him? Well, it meets it because obviously he's the Prime Minister and can essentially do what the fuck he wants. Everything is easily considered essential when you're supposed to be running the country, but as we know, the rules certainly won't apply to him if he decides so. Let's be honest, there's fuck all you or Labour or actually anyone else can do about it at this point. He runs the country and that is the end of it. His majority practically puts you right in the shit, just along with us peasants down here. It finishes up with an SNP spokesman told the national newspaper the Prime Minister is always welcome to visit Scotland. The law in Scotland requires all work that can be done at home to be done at home, and Scottish ministers are not engaging in visits in line with the current stay-at-home regulations and the requirement to stay local. So it's clear the PM must think the Union is really in peril if he considers his visit to be so essential. No, I expect it's not really in peril. He's just coming up there to make sure he trolls you salty little shit weasels. Now obviously all of that talk from the SNP was just that, talk. They can't stop Boris Johnson from doing anything. He can stop them from doing almost everything if he decided to. Let's be honest, he has the power to take everything away from them. 80-seat majority means he can do whatever he wants in Parliament. That is the end of it. The amount of salt coming out of the SNP here though is fucking biblical, and I've got to say, I love it once again. Nothing makes me happier than seeing a bunch of salty SNP shitweasels crying their little eyes out because Boris Johnson or anyone else is there promoting the Union. This is obviously good news. Make sure you go up there, Boris, and piss these tosspots off.
There is a pattern consistent throughout history. of oppressed people turning on the oppressors, slaves against their owners, the peasantry against the feudal barons, colonies, Mr. Verhofstadt, against their empires. And that is why Britain is leaving. And it doesn't matter which language you use, we are going, and we are glad to be going. We're off.